Some stories are written in ink. Ours are written in fear. Welcome to Whisper Pen. Take a deep breath and let the darkness in.
The first thing you need to know about Alcatraz is the smell. It's not a bad smell, not really. It's a complex combination. There's the sharp, salty tang of the sea, always hanging in the air, clinging to your clothes and creeping into your nostrils. There's the scent of centuries-old damp concrete, an earthy, cold smell like a tomb. And beneath it all, there's another scent, the smell of dried despair. It's like the smell of a musty old book, if that book were written with tears and regret. Are you getting that sound, Max? Julian's voice crackled through my headphones, pulling me from my olfactory reverie. That palpable sound of loneliness? Perfect! I rolled my eyes, though he couldn't see. Got it, Julian. Palpable loneliness is on tape. Sounds a lot like wind to me, but you're the boss. I'm Maxwell Cole, sound engineer for Forgotten Mysteries, a ridiculously low-budget ghost hunting show that had somehow conned the National Park Service into letting us stay the night on The Rock. Julian's idea, of course. He was the host, director, and a professional narcissist. He had hair that stayed perfectly coiffed even in the bay wind, and a smile that could sell a refrigerator to an Eskimo.
"This isn't just wind, Max," he said dramatically, turning to Lena, our camerawoman. "This is the sigh of history. The spirits of Al Capone, of Machine Gun Kelly, they're whispering to us." Lena just snorted, readjusting the heavy camera on her shoulder. "If they're whispering, tell them to speak up. The lighting in here is terrible." Lena was our anchor to reality. Mercilessly practical, didn't believe in anything she couldn't see through a lens, and could outdrink any sailor. She and I were team, just here for the paycheck. The last of our four-person crew was Arthur Poe. Arthur was our hired historian, a small, wispy man with glasses as thick as bottle bottoms and an almost pathological enthusiasm for Alcatraz. He knew every inmate's number, every escapee's last meal, and what type of mold grew in which corner of D Block. Actually, Arthur piped up, pushing his glasses up his nose, Capone was in B Block, and the ghost stories are largely a fabrication for the tourists. The real concern isn't ghosts, it's temporal anomalies. The island, it remembers. "Brilliant! Write that into the script," Julian crowed, slapping Arthur on the back so hard he nearly toppled over. "Temporal anomalies. The audience will eat it up." Our plan for the night was to reenact the great 1962 escape, Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers. The dummy heads made of toilet paper and human hair, the holes chipped through crumbling walls, a raft made of raincoats. It was reality TV schlock at its finest. My job was to capture spooky whispers and mysterious door slams for Julian to edit in later. Easy gig.
We spent the first few hours setting up. Lena arranged lighting, Julian practiced his dramatic lines in a mirror in the warden's office. Arthur and I were tasked with making the dummy heads. "Are you sure this looks like John Anglin?" I asked, trying to glue a tuft of hair, procured from a mainland barber shop, onto a papier-mâché blob that looked more like a diseased potato than a human being. "The jaw needs to be squarer," Arthur muttered, not looking up from his own creation. "And his eyes were emptier, the emptiness of a man who had accepted his fate." "Arthur, it's toilet paper and glue. Vaguely sad is the best I can do." That's when the humor ended. As night truly fell, the island changed. The sun set behind the Golden Gate Bridge, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. But on Alcatraz, the darkness didn't feel like a mere absence of light. It spilled out of the cells, seeped from cracks in the concrete. It was thick and cold. A cold that got into your bones. "All right, people, places," Julian directed. "Arthur, you get in Morris's cell. Lena, get me a wide shot of the Broadway corridor. Max, I want to be able to hear a mouse sigh from 100 yards." I put on my headphones, twisting the knobs on my sound mixer. The outside world faded, and I sank into the world of amplified sound. The wind howling through broken bars, the steady drip of water somewhere far away, our own footsteps echoing unnaturally in the vast silence of the main cell house.
We started filming. Julian was in the middle of a breathless monologue about the desperation of being locked in a 5 by 9 foot cell. I was focused on filtering out the electronic hum from one of Lena's lights, and then I heard it. Through my headphones, underneath Julian's booming voice, was another sound, very faint. A cough, dry, suppressed. It came from an empty cell about 30 feet to my right. I ripped my headphones off. "Hold on," I signaled. Julian stopped mid-sentence, looking annoyed. "What is it, Max?" "Did you guys hear that?" I asked. Lena shook her head. "Hear what? I just hear you ruining a perfectly good take." "A cough," I said. "It sounded like someone's in cell 142. Arthur, who was standing in a nearby cell, looked pale. "No one's been in cell 142 since 1963. Julian grinned. "Did you get it on tape, Max? That's pure gold. We're using that." I wasn't so sure. The sound. It didn't feel like a spooky sound effect. It felt real, human. I rewound my recording. There it was, a dry cough, clear as day. I shivered. We kept filming. Things seemed normal for the next hour or so. Julian was hamming it up, describing how the escapees used sharpened spoons to dig. Arthur was supplying morbidly precise historical details. "They had to work during music hour," Arthur said, his voice almost a reverent whisper. "Every evening from 5:30 to 6 o'clock, inmates were allowed to play their instruments, accordions, guitars. It was the perfect cover for the scraping and digging." As he spoke, I heard it again. This time it wasn't a cough. It was music, faint, a sad, distorted melody from an accordion, like it was being played from the end of a long underwater hallway. It lasted only a few seconds and then faded. I froze. "There it is again," I whispered. "You have to have heard that, the accordion." Lena looked at me like I was crazy. "Max, maybe you should take a break. There's no music." But Arthur wasn't looking at me. He was staring down the dark corridor that led to D block, the solitary confinement block, the worst place in the prison.
"Arthur, get back here," Julian called. "We're rolling." But Arthur didn't listen. He was being pulled by some invisible string. Lena cursed and heaved her camera up, following him. Julian and I exchanged a look and then hurried after them. D block was even colder than the rest of the prison. The air was thick and heavy. The cells here didn't have bars. They were solid steel doors with a small slot at the bottom. The hole. "Arthur, that's enough," Julian said, his voice now having lost its usual bravado. "This isn't funny." Arthur stopped in front of one particular cell at the end of the row, cell 14D. Its steel door was ajar, which was strange as all the others were sealed shut. "He was in here," Arthur whispered, his voice full of awe. "Roof Purseful, inmate 142AZ. He went mad in here, chopped off his own fingers with the hatchet." "That's a lovely detail, but can we please go back to where the lights are?" I said, my voice an octave higher than usual. Arthur paid no attention. He reached out and pushed gently on the steel door. It swung open with a blood-curdling creak, revealing absolute blackness. "I just want to see," he said, and he stepped inside. The steel door slammed shut behind him. Slam! The sound echoed through the cell block like a gunshot. It wasn't a normal slam. It had a terrible, finality to it. We stood frozen for a second. "Arthur!" Julian yelled, rushing to the door. He grabbed the handle and pulled. It didn't budge. "Damn it! Arthur, open the door! This is not the time for jokes!" No answer. "Max, get your light on this." I shone the powerful beam from my flashlight into the door's slot. Nothing, just darkness. Lena pointed her camera at it using the night vision mode. "There's nothing," she said, her voice trembling. "The cell is empty." "What? How can it be empty? He just walked in." We tried everything. We yelled, we banged on the door, we tried to pry it with a tripod leg, but it was solid as rock. Arthur Poe, our little historian, had vanished into an empty cell.
The panic started to set in. Real, stomach-twisting panic.
Okay, calm down, Julian said, but he was hyperventilating. "It's a prank, an elaborate prank. He found a secret passage or something. He's going to pop out any second, laughing at us." But he didn't. We searched everywhere. We went back to the main cell house, calling his name. The only answer was the echo of our own voices. Our cell phones, of course, had no signal. The boat wasn't coming back until 7 a.m. We were trapped with a missing person and a growing fear that we were not alone. About an hour later, Lena found it, Arthur's little notebook. It was lying on the floor right in front of cell 14D, where we hadn't seen it before. It was open to a single page. On it, written in Arthur's shaky, hurried script, wasn't a historical note. It was a number, 142AZ. That's the inmate number he mentioned, Ruth Percival. Julian snatched the notebook, staring at it. For the first time since I'd known him, his confident smirk was completely gone. "What the hell is going on here?" he whispered. That's when our world really started to fall apart. We decided to retreat to the warden's office, the most secure place we could think of. We locked the door, we would wait it out until morning. That was the plan. "We should review the footage," Lena suggested, her voice straining for professionalism. "Maybe the camera caught something we missed." She hooked up the camera to a portable monitor. We huddled around it. The footage showed us following Arthur down the dark corridor. The image was grainy. "Wait, go back," I said, pointing at the screen. "Right before he enters the cell." Lena rewound. We squinted. For a millisecond, just as Arthur neared the threshold, there was a shimmer in the air behind him, a distortion, like heat rising off asphalt. And in that distortion, I swear I saw another figure, taller than Arthur, wearing what looked like a guard's uniform. But it was there for a single frame, and then it was gone. "Did you see that?" I breathed. "See what? I didn't see anything," Julian snapped, but his eyes were glued to the screen.
The noises started getting worse. I still had my headphones on, too scared to take them off. Now I wasn't just hearing isolated sounds. I was hearing a phantom symphony. Coughs, shuffling feet, the screech of metal doors, the scraping of tin cups on bars. It was all faint, on the edge of my hearing, but it was there. The island was coming alive. "I need a spare battery," Lena said suddenly, getting to her feet. "I left it in my gear bag in the mess hall." "Don't go alone," I warned. "No way." "I'll be fine, Max," she said, trying for a brave smile. "It's just down the hall. You two stay here. I'll be right back." She left. We heard her footsteps fade. 1 minute passed. 5 minutes. "Lena?" Julian called out, his voice shaking. Silence. "Damn it," I hissed, grabbing my strongest flashlight. "Let's go!" We unlocked the door and rushed out. The mess hall was at the end of the main cell block, past the visitation area. The weak light from our work lamps cast dancing shadows. "Lena!" I shouted. We found her. Well, not exactly.
We found her camera. It was on the floor of the mess hall, right next to one of the long tables. The record light was still on. It was pointed at a cell on the other side of the corridor. Julian picked it up. "It's still recording." "Play it back," I whispered, my heart thudding in my ears. He hit the button. The small screen came to life. The footage was shaky, showing Lena's POV as she walked from the warden's office. She entered the mess hall. She muttered something about batteries, and then she stopped. The camera panned towards a specific cell, Al Capone's cell. "What's that?" Lena's voice came from the camera, curious, not scared. The camera zoomed in on the cell. It was empty, of course, but through the lens, we could see something on the small cot. A banjo. There had been no banjo there when we passed by earlier. "That's weird," Lena's voice said again. She walked toward the cell door, which was wide open. She peered inside. Her face, faintly reflected on a metal surface, looked confused. She reached out a hand, as if to touch something invisible. And then she stepped inside. On the footage, the moment she crossed the threshold, the impossible happened. The cell door, which had been wide open, was suddenly there, in the frame. It didn't close. It was just there, already closed, rusted, and locked for decades. Lena had walked into a sealed cell. The footage continued for a few more seconds, just showing the rusty door, and then ended.
I felt bile rise in my throat. I almost dropped my sound mixer. "No," Julian mumbled, backing away, bumping into a table. No. Now, there were two of us. The panic was no longer an undercurrent. It was a flood. We ran, aimlessly, back into the main cell block. And that's when we saw them. In the faint, ghostly light of the moon through the high windows, the cell block was no longer empty. There were figures. Dozens of them, all dressed in striped prison uniforms. They weren't transparent ghosts. They looked solid, but their colors were faded, like an old photograph. They were walking in a single file line, shuffling soullessly toward the mess hall. And in the middle of them was Arthur Poe. He was wearing the same striped uniform as the others. His glasses were gone, his face was blank, his eyes staring straight ahead, not seeing us. He was shuffling along with them. "Arthur!" Julian screamed, a desperate cry. Arthur didn't react. He was just part of the line. And then I saw Lena. She wasn't in the line. She was in Al Capone's cell. The door was now wide open again. She was standing there, facing the wall, her hands flat against the cold concrete. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just stood there. A new fixture in this living museum. "Lena?" I whispered, my voice breaking. She didn't turn around. This wasn't a haunting. This was an assimilation. The island wasn't possessed by dead spirits. It was a scar in time, a sentient prison, and it was recruiting new inmates to fill its empty cells. It didn't kill you, it just assigned you a role. It erased who you were and made you part of its memory. 142 AZ. Arthur hadn't just seen Rufus Percival's cell. He had become Rufus Percival. The noise was deafening now. I could hear it even without the headphones. The shouts of guards, the clang of alarm bells, the slamming of doors. The entire 1950s prison had come alive around us. Julian finally broke. The confident, charismatic man dissolved, leaving a small, trembling man in his place. "This is my fault," he cried, slumping to the floor. I brought us here. For the show. For a stupid show. Get up, Julian, I yelled, pulling at him. We have to go. But where? Just then, a group of phantom guards appeared at the end of the corridor. They looked just as faded as the inmates, but they walked with a terrifying purpose. One of them pointed at us. Those two, get them! The voice was echoing and distorted. Julian looked at them, and a strange thing happened. The fear on his face was replaced by something else. A spark of madness, a final twisted acceptance. Perfect shot, he whispered. He stood up, unconsciously smoothing his hair. He turned to the approaching guards, holding his hands out as if directing a scene. Brilliant, the intensity, but can you enter from the left? The lighting will be better. He said, his host's voice returning, I'm Julian Rhodes, and this is Forgotten Mysteries. The guards didn't slow down. They walked through the space where he stood. As they passed, Julian flickered. Once, twice. His colors began to fade. His modern clothes morphed into a gray guard's uniform. His panicked features hardened into a blank, emotionless mask. He turned, now one of them, and looked right at me. Inmate, back to your cell, he said, Julian's voice, but empty, soulless. I was the last one.
I ran. I didn't know where I was running. I just knew I had to get away from them. I ran through the mess hall, through the visitation area. The island was screaming around me. I could feel it trying to latch onto me, trying to assign me a number, a cell, a fate. Inmate 841-AZ. Guilty of escape? The thought flashed through my mind. Not my own. A temptation. Just accept it. It will be easier. No! The escape plan, the dummy heads, the raft, it was a joke, a cheap TV stunt. But it was the only thing I had. I ducked into the cell where we'd left our props. I didn't dare look into the other cells, afraid I'd see another version of myself looking back. I grabbed one of the stupid papier-mâché heads, threw it on the bunk, and pulled the blanket up. Then, I scrambled into the hole in the wall we'd used for the reenactment. It led to a dark, narrow utility corridor. I crawled, my skin scraping against rusty pipes and cold concrete. I could hear the phantom guards searching for me, their footsteps echoing through the walls. He's in the walls! Seal the exits! Julian's distorted voice called out. I crawled faster, my heart a jackhammer. I reached a ventilation shaft, just like the real escapees had. I climbed, my body screaming in protest. I made it to the roof. The cold wind hit my face. Freedom. Almost. I could see the lights of San Francisco in the distance. Another world. The raft. We had hidden the prop raft made of over 50 raincoats near the shore for the final scene. I slid down a drain pipe, tearing the skin from my hands. I sprinted across the desolate exercise yard towards the water's edge. I found it, a pathetic-looking rubbery mass. I dragged it to the icy water of the bay. "You can't escape!" a voice whispered right behind my ear. I didn't look back. I pushed the raft out and jumped on. I paddled frantically with my hands, away from the cursed island.
I looked back once. On the shore, 4 figures were standing. Arthur, Lena, and Julian. And a fourth, a faint, shimmering silhouette that was struggling to take form. It had my build. I turned away and paddled. I paddled until my hands were bleeding and my muscles burned. The cold current tried to pull me under, but it was nothing compared to the eternal stillness of that prison. They found me hours later, a fishing boat. I was clinging to a ripped piece of raincoat, half dead from hypothermia, babbling about numbers and phantom guards. The official story was a tragedy, a freak storm. The entire crew of Forgotten Mysteries was presumed to have been swept away and drowned. There was only one lone survivor,
suffering from shock and delusion. I tried to tell them the truth. They put me on sedatives. I'm out now. I'm in a clean, safe apartment in Oakland, but I never really left Alcatraz. Sometimes at night, I still hear the distant accordion. In crowds, I see blank faces, and I have to check if they're wearing stripes. I can't stand quiet spaces. I'm haunted by numbers. 142. 841. Last night, I was brushing my teeth. I looked in the mirror. For a moment, just a moment, the light hit my forehead in a strange way. And I swear, I saw it. Faint, like an old scar. 842 AZ. The island didn't get me, but it tagged me. It's still waiting, because in its prison, there's always one more empty cell.
The final word has been written for tonight, but the Whisper Pen is never truly silent. Subscribe and return for the next chapter. Good night.